Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. It's Tony from Safe Haven, and it's a beautiful day out here while I go and do my errands before getting to the meat and potatoes of the day, which is work. Today I wanted to discuss some things I've been doing some research on, and particularly how it applies with dealing with narc abuse. Specifically, I've been researching the issue of relationship addiction, codependency, and how all that works together. And I was really floored because a lot of this I could apply to myself. The reason why, especially if we're a narc abuse victim, we a lot of times, not all the time, but a lot of times we do wind up going back to toxic situations or toxic people, is because we are addicted to the dopamine, we're addicted to the rush, right? But there is a cycle, which I just finally realized when I researched. I'm like, oh wait, this actually validates what I've experienced. The cycle is you initiate contact or they initiate contact. Contact is initiated. There's hope, there's expectancy, and then there's a brief payoff, right? They either reply back or they engage in relations with you or whatever the case may be, or they start showing kindness or, whatever, right? So then this starts to feed feed the cycle. You start getting more and more hyped to be around them. You start getting more and more hyped to connect with them. And then next thing you know, they pull back, right? They devalue, they discard, they, ghost, whatever the case may be. And now you're crashing because you allowed yourself to go up the hill of expectation and hope, and boom, they let you down consistently, because they always do that, because in the end they always look out for their best self-interest. So in the moment, their self-interest, their best interest at hand is taken care of, for lack of a better word, or is fulfilled by dealing with you. And you're not the only one. You may be the only one at one time in particular, but you will not be the only one for long. They're always going to, find other sources. They're always going to find that, supply from multiple people. So what happens is, once that cycle, you go up the hill, your hopes go up, they start future faking, they start lying, they start having these epiphanies, they start saying, oh, I understand where I went wrong. Or they may not even get that far. They just may be like, well, now do you get why I left? But I think we have a chance. I see you making improvements. I see you doing this and that, right? So then you start thinking to yourself, oh, wow, golly gee, maybe this will work. And next thing you know, they start pulling away. They start acting indifferent. They start, just pulling back. And you are left holding the bag. And you crash. And you hurt. And you feel upset. And you feel angry. And you feel resentful. And you feel bitter. And you vow to never let this person get to you again. And then the cycle starts all over. The push-pull, as they call it. Hey, how are you? Was just thinking about you. Da 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 da. What are you doing? Can we hang out? Can we do this? Can we do that? And next thing you know, you start feeding into that cycle again. Next thing you know, the love bombing. Well, you've always been the one. Every time my relationship hasn't worked out, you've been there, right? It's just a load of crock. Because At the end of the day, you're just a gap filler. You're a gap filler when they're in a relationship with you. You're going to be a gap filler between relationships in their life, period. Because they have a void and they are not, narcs are not self-soothing. They don't have that inner center. They have a false self. They operate off of a false self. So they are going to use people to feed their own addiction and feed their own hole, right? You'll also notice that just like any addiction, when you get the initial payoff, it feels great. And then you feel like, afterwards you feel like crap, right? People who have a drug addiction or alcohol abuse or even like a gaming addiction, whatever, in the moment, it feels great. You're getting that high, you're scratching that itch, you're getting that oomph, right? Life is beautiful. But then when the high wears off, when the sexual episode is done, when the game is turned off, when the needle is put down, when the glass is empty, you start to feel like crap. Particularly with a narc abuse victim, because deep down, that this person is not right for you. You know that this person is lying. You absolutely do not trust this person. You don't trust them. You may love them. You may care about them. You may like them, but you don't trust them. And when you don't trust somebody, it's very, 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 it's impossible. I'm not even going to say it's hard. It's impossible to feel fulfilled being around them when you don't trust them. Because you know that you're dealing with a snake, right? So you know that this relationship is not going to go anywhere. You know that they have not changed. You know that they're going to hurt you again. And you know that your opinions of them are actually, your opinion is not going to magically change because you know who and what they are. You can lie to yourself and try to deceive yourself, but you know that you're lying to yourself. And you know that they ultimately do not care about you. Okay? And you know how you know this? Even if you don't know if they're a narc or not, or even if you're unsure as to whether they have NPD, the fact that they did not choose you, whether they cheated on you or just, dumped you off and then ran off with the next person and then tried to come back. The fact is, at one point, they stopped choosing you. And that hurts, especially when you show that you consistently choose them, right? So that alone is enough to put a damper in any kind of healing or any kind of growth in the relationship. Now, add to that knowing that, especially if you've been armed with the information that's freely and readily available, add to the fact that you now know that they don't really see you as a true individual. They see you as someone who fulfills their needs in the moment. Now you're feeling like just a useful toy. You're just feeling like an idiot, actually, right? You don't feel like you're being valued. So, with that being said, once we acknowledge the fact that this is a relationship addiction that we're in, if we're having trouble disconnecting from that person, we can call a spade a spade. So, like for me, I knew that constantly connecting with a narcissistic ex was damaging. But I was like, well, why do I keep going back? Is it because I love them? Is it because I have low self-esteem? Is it because I feel that maybe this time they'll change? No, it was just an addiction. So for anybody who is struggling with disconnecting from an abusive individual and who's struggling with like just saying, was struggling with explaining away behavior or struggling with, trying to heal up, I would highly advise y'all to look into breaking abusive, addictive relationships or relationship addiction, and really study that out. And basically, it's it's simple, but it's not easy. Simple. First step, acknowledge it as an addiction. Second step, realize that this addiction is hurting you. Ultimately, it's hurting you. Don't worry about how it's affecting the other person, because they are addicts. If you look at narcs, I guarantee you they're addicts not only with relationships, they're addicts in anything, whether it be food, drugs, alcohol, going to the gym, social interactions, feel good. They're constantly chasing a high. And they're going to use you as a glorified heroin needle, right? And you will use them as a glorified heroin needle. Because look, it feels great to be validated by somebody. But you have the ability to acknowledge that and break that off and get help. So first thing, acknowledge it. Second, understand how it's affecting you. Maybe write down a list of how you feel every time you're going through that cycle. Like, acknowledge it. Write it down. Hey, look, I felt great on this day when I reconnected with them. It was great, but then it crashed. And this is how I felt afterwards. And understand, focus on the time in which you crashed. Focus on the time in which you felt hurt. And make sure those parts of the story are blown up in your mind, so you're not constantly focusing on the good times. Because just like with anything that you're addicted to, the good times are very small compared to the lousy feeling, right? But we will wire ourselves to go for the small good time in exchange for a long bad time or a long painful time, right? So there's that. And third off, try to get an accountability partner, whether it's through a therapist. Again, I tell you guys, Talkspace, BetterHelp, for online therapy. If your insurance covers it, get a real, in-person therapist, whatever the case may be. Get that accountability. Open up, say, listen, I got a relationship addiction. What are some tools I can use to break this? Once you start working on breaking that, just like with any addiction, you have to remove the source of temptation. So you got to acknowledge that A, you have an addiction. B, you got to acknowledge that this addiction is not helping you. It's hurting you. It's stunting your growth. You've got to get an accountability partner, whether it's a friend or a therapist, preferably a therapist, because a friend, let's face it, they're your friend, right? They want to see you happy. And a lot of times, friends, good friends are going to call you out, but some friends will be like, hey, look, maybe you got to give it another shot, this and that, right? Fourth, you have to remove the source of temptation. Whether, delete everything, delete the messages, the pictures, the contact info, all that. If you share kids with this individual, it's going to be tougher. It's going to be a lot harder, but it's not impossible. That's when you go gray rock. That's when you really lean into learning to be bland as a, grain of rice. No, rice is actually delicious. Bland as a gray pebble on the floor, right? Bland. And then the fifth, I think I'm at the fifth thing, right? The fifth thing you got to do is you have to fill your time and your mind with positive, with growth. What do you want to do? Spend time researching or going back to school, or trying to advance your career or increase your income or reconnect with friends, or combination. Fill up and draw dopamine and draw that high from doing positive things in your life. Okay? That is the only way you will be able to truly rebuild yourself. It's like when you're building or renovating a structure and you got to go into the foundation, because your mind is your foundation in your life. And you're now removing a piece of your mind. You're removing something that takes up a lot of space in your mind, and you got to replace it with other things. When you're digging into the ground, you're building a building, or you have an existing building, and you have to fix the foundation. You can't just tear the building down and rebuild it. No, you have to go and you have to dig into the ground, and replace the foundation piece by piece. You can't just hollow out the foundation, the building will collapse. You have to replace it, right? Replace those pillars. Replace that need for the validation of this person with the validation of yourself, with pouring into others, with pouring into your career, your kids, your life in general, and watching that fruit, blossom, right? These people are always going to be who they are, and they're always going to look to you to give them what they need to get that dopamine rush. Don't let them use you as a human heroin needle. Let them battle their own addictions, because at the end of the day, everyone's responsible for themselves. And if they're not fighting their own, if they're fighting their own demons and losing, that's on them. You can only think about yourself in a good way, and you can only be responsible for yourself. That's what I meant to say. You got to be responsible for yourself. All right. So these are some tips I learned that are helping me, that I remind myself of. I hope these can help you grow through it. In life, you're either going through it or growing through it, and I hope this video helps you to grow through it. Y'all be safe.